Hi, and welcome everybody. I'm Ryan Evans with the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Glad to be hosting you on another webinar today. And the center's webinar series happens most Thursdays at this time, noon central. As always, you can check out our website at cap.unl.edu for an upcoming schedule of webinars as well as past recordings, including this one. And the recording should be there later this afternoon or certainly within the next 24 hours. And you can also find parts 1 and 2 of these livestock insurance basics webinars that were recorded earlier this summer right there as well. So with today, as you might infer, we are talking about livestock insurance again, focusing on umbrella insurance and looking at if you are truly protected if something goes wrong on your operation, especially in situations where standard farm insurance may not be enough. So today, Shannon Sand, who is an extension educator and agricultural economist serving the west central portion of the state, who's based in North Platte, is going to be presenting on umbrella coverage and as part of your risk management plan, how it works, why it's perhaps a smart addition to your plan, and the ins and outs of it. We'll also work to answer any questions you have. If you want to throw those into the Q&A or the chat box as we go, we will get those answered before our time is up today. So with that, I will welcome Shannon Sand back to our webinar series. Shannon, thanks for presenting today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it. All right. So like Ryan said, we're going to talk about livestock insurance basics, part 3, umbrella insurance. So just so you know, umbrella insurance is a general coverage in addition to your regular farm and ranch liability insurance. We'll talk more about that later, but I do want to say I am talking about this from a ranch or a livestock perspective. But umbrella insurance can be used honestly on a lot of different things. First, we want to thank our funders for this, which is the USDA North Central Extension Risk Management Education. We couldn't have brought this to you without it, and it has been very, very helpful in making sure we can get out some additional educational material for everybody. So, just a quick overview. We're going to talk about what is umbrella insurance. Why is liability risk a concern in livestock operations? The goals of it really are going to be to define what is umbrella insurance, discuss again some liability exposure in livestock operations. I'm sure I don't necessarily have to tell y'all if you're involved in livestock in any format, shape, that there is risk involved. How does umbrella insurance enhance existing coverage? Because again, it's an enhancement. It's called umbrella. Like literally think of it as something that goes on top of whatever you already have. I'm going to do a few different examples as we go through this and kind of summarize it. But hopefully by the end of this session, you'll understand what it is, why it matters, and how it may fit into your operation. All right. So what is umbrella insurance? So umbrella insurance is a form of liability insurance. Again, think of it as that layer that sits on top of your existing policies, like farm liability, auto, or general business coverage. If you face a large claim that exceeds your existing policy limits, your umbrella policy kicks in, right? So, for example, if your farm liability policy covers up to $1 million, which a lot of places that's kind of minimum standard of what's covered for the farm or ranch, and let's say you're sued for $1.5 million, your umbrella insurance policy could cover that extra $500,000 plus the legal fees, which again, I don't know about y'all, but those legal fees can eat people alive a lot of times. It's relatively inexpensive and designed to protect against low frequency but high costs. So again, like major lawsuits. Um, you know, it's not a replacement. It's really just extra protection. So again, like I said, it's called umbrella because I think it sits on top of what you already have, you know? Okay. So again, what does it cover? So umbrella policy covers a wide range of scenarios, including things like bodily injury to others, property damage, not your own, which we'll get into what it doesn't cover later. Legal defense costs, which, like I said, can add up quickly. Even personal liability issues like slander or libel sometimes can be covered under these. Again, the thing with any policy is you really have to read it and again, talk to your professional insurance agent to see kind of what suits you best. And a lot of this also is going to depend on your risk, right? Your risk tolerance. Some other things that are covered, um, again, liability from owned trucks, trailers, equipment. Um, Again, I think of livestock, so we think, I don't know about y'all, I come from a small farmer ranch. The bull gets out. You try your best, but he just gets out. And we're lucky we don't live near a major highway, but I've met people that have. And, it's always a heart attack waiting to happen, basically. Even if you don't live near a highway, it's always a concern if he gets out and gets on the road, what's going to happen, right? Because again, that's a potential liability. Um, that's out there. So, um, this protection again, so in ag, especially in livestock operations, the risks aren't just, like I said, on the farm. They can follow you on the road. So I think of mostly because we had this happen in the last month with our family. Like I said, the bull got out. But they can follow you on the road to things like the sale barn. We do not expect accidents to happen with our animals in the trailer. We really hope and pray they do not, but sometimes they do. So again, um, it can follow you to the sale barn or even into the community at times. So this protection is often triggered basically once your base liability policy has paid out to its limits. So a lot of times, like I said, that's generally 1 million, sometimes two. I think 2 million is kind of becoming a standard now, but even beyond that, again, that umbrella will trigger like once you've exceeded whatever your regular liability policy is. And like I said, it can include things like that bodily injury, property damage. Again, think escaped livestock that may have caused accidents, libel or slander. Sometimes that's social media related stuff. And then the liability from owned trucks, trailers, equipment. Again, most of us have all of these things. So, why does it matter for livestock? I've kind of stated this already. I got ahead of myself. That happens sometimes. But our livestock operations, they carry unique liabilities. You have animals, which are unpredictable, right? Whether that's sheep, goats, cattle, horses, honeybees, you name it, right? They're animals, they're unpredictable. So, and you're dealing with trucks and trailers to move them a lot of times. Sometimes there are visitors, which include not just, I know a lot of people think school tours, I feel like when they think visitors, but visitors can be your veterinarian. I've heard of stories again, where the vet's coming to visit, and I was like, there's a hole or something that wasn't seen, and I was like, they sprained an ankle. So, I mean, nothing came of it, but I'm just saying those liabilities exist on our operation all the time. We have visitors, we have workers, and sometimes, again, the public involved. So, you might be near roads, towns, or schools, which increases exposure if animals get loose, if you move equipment or, again, animals. Um, Manure spills, again, depending on your operation, environmental claims or injuries from working cattle. All those could trigger lawsuits that exceed standard policy limits pretty easily if you think about it. Umbrella insurance can give you a kind of an additional peace of mind, if you will, when your operation is under pressure from a serious liability event. It really is, again, it's just that extra on top of what you already have. A lot of this is going to depend on your risk tolerance, your risk level. I always say how much money you have in the bank and, what you think is going to happen. Location of your operation. If you're in the middle of nowhere, far, far, far away from town, it may not be something that you're interested in and or need. So again, your location is going to be dependent, right? But if you're 15 minutes from town, you're near a major highway, some of that stuff, again, talk to your insurance agent. Think about your own personal risk position. Again, I talk and do a lot with strategic and risk management. So I always think of things from a position of risk, like, am I willing to chance this? What are the chances of something like this happening? So again, everybody's operation's different, so I can't tell you what is right for yours, but I can just give you a few different scenarios as we go through this. So, here's an example that I have been hinting at because this didn't happen to my family, but this is one I made up. So, all right, so we have liability trends in agriculture. We know this is happening to our neighbors, our friends, and family and stuff. I was like, we're in a litigious society here. So if something happens, somebody breaks a finger, you may get sued. Um, and I don't mean to use hyperbole with that, but you know, I have heard of wilder things happening. So in this example, we have an escaped bull that causes a traffic accident. You can see him here. He is very scared and does not know what is happening. Clearly, again, an animal, unpredictable. The liability exceeds $1 million because there's a lot of vehicles here. I mean, he escaped on what looks like the interstate, right? So, the umbrella policy in this case, in this example, would cover beyond auto and farm liability. So if the operation only has, let's say, $1 million policy, and the umbrella may have another million, so you're covered up to that 2 million. Now, if you exceed beyond that, you may end up having, again, other repercussions like having to sell off pieces of the operation. So, um, but an umbrella policy is, like I said, just that extra little bit of coverage for that rainy day in case you need it. So, how it works, like I've stated, umbrella insurance is for agriculture is a lot of people I know have those. So, umbrella insurance for agriculture is a crucial form of protection that provides, again, that extra layer of liability coverage. Think of it as a risk management tool, really, beyond the limits of an operator's existing primary insurance policies. It's designed to protect the farm, ranch, or agribusiness from catastrophic liability that could otherwise lead to severe financial hardship or bankruptcy. Again, I think we all probably have heard at some point in our lifetime of somebody that ended up losing the operation because a cow got out, or there was a terrible truck and trailer accident or something along those lines. Or I'm sure you can think of a million other examples, more so than myself even. But again, so those umbrella insurance policies really just sit on top of existing coverage so they can trigger when necessary. How it works, an ag umbrella policy, like I said, sits on top of your primary insurance, and it covers such as your farm and ranch liability policy, personal auto policy, and any other qualifying commercial liability policy. So again, this is also where it's really important to talk to your insurance agent, preferably one that specializes in the area of agriculture, so they can get you hooked up with your correct policies that you need, depending on your risk tolerance. So, um, but yeah, its key functions basically is excess coverage, which again, we don't really want excess a lot of times, but basically what it is like I said, when a claim exceeds the liability limits of your underlying policies, the umbrella policy kicks in to cover the excess damage. For example, if your farm liability policy has $1 million limit and that lawsuit's 1.5, then the umbrella policy can cover the remaining 500,000. It offers kind of broadened coverage in some cases. Again, every state, every county, I say every state, every state is different. Even some counties are different. So really, like, I'm in Nebraska, so I was like, I want to be very specific about who I talk to about my insurance policy, right? Like, I'd want to talk to somebody out of Lincoln County here. So again, you really want to be specific. So in some cases, that umbrella policy can provide coverage for certain liabilities that may not be covered under a primary policy. It is typically subject to a self-insured retention, or SIR, which functions like a deductible of the umbrella policy. Again, every policy is different. Talk to your agent. It can protect your various assets, obviously, because in some cases, an umbrella policy can provide coverage for certain liabilities that, um, oh, this type of insurance helps protect not only your farm and ranch's assets, but also your personal assets and future earnings from a large judgment or settlement. So if there's a large judgment or settlement against you or your operation, and again, depending on how that's set up, if it's LLC, if it's in trust, all of that stuff makes a difference. That's why it's, again, for your risk management perspective, really important to have a solid team behind you too. Again, but you really, again, an umbrella insurance coverage policy can really help if you end up, if you're concerned about the potential of having very litigious people come after you. It can also cover things like medical expenses, bodily injury, lost wages, and funeral costs for people injured on the property as a result of the operation. Property damage, physical destruction of someone else's property, including loss of its use. Um, I know I talked about bodily injury, but personal injury. So this goes beyond physical harm to cover offenses, again, such as libel, slander, false arrest, and invasion of privacy. It can help cover legal defense costs. So the policy typically covers the costs associated with defending a lawsuit, including attorney's fees, court costs, and other related expenses. And some of those can add up very, very, very quickly. Um, some common scenarios where an umbrella policy is essential is basically if you're a farmer ranch and you face a lot of risks that can lead to, like I said, large liability claims, like think of where you're located, like how close are you to town, how busy is your street, right? Or the road out near your house, or even how far does that animal have to go to get to the sale barn? I think it's stuff like that, right? Some of us have a 2-hour trip to the sale barn, okay, or more. So, and that's a liability on your part if something happens and that animal gets loose and causes someone there's a whole bunch of. So, again, um vehicle accidents, it covers that as well. A farm vehicle or truck used for business causes a serious accident on a public road, and the damages exceed your commercial or personal auto policy limits. And a lot of times our auto policy limits are only what? I think in Nebraska, is it a minimum of 100,000 or is it 2 or 3? I forget. But I was like, there are limits on all of those. And that, again, that umbrella policy triggers to help cover any excess, plus any court costs or anything like that. Hopefully that never happens, but yeah. Product liability, even a farm or ranch that has crops or livestock, maybe again, I'm hoping this doesn't ever happen, but I'm just giving you scenarios, could cause an illness or injury to a consumer leading to a lawsuit. Again, we've all heard of these things happening. Um, you know, On-farm accidents, again, the ones I hear most often, I feel like are generally related to like schools or visitors. A visitor or an employee is seriously injured on your property due to a piece of equipment, a fall, or another unforeseen event resulting in costly medical bills and lawsuit. Um, Aggretainment. So if your operation, so I think of like I'm from the South and we have a lot of roadside stands and U-picks. So if your farm offers activities like hay rides, corn mazes in the fall, or pick your own operations, an umbrella policy could potentially provide uh, a crucial additional liability coverage and protection for guests. Some key considerations are to qualify for an ag umbrella policy, you typically must already have a certain amount or level of underlying liability coverage on your other policies. Many policies are customizable with different endorsements to cover specific risks related to your operations. Again, that's why I said it's really important to work with a licensed insurance agent that is familiar with agriculture, preferably. And I mean, even in your county and area, hopefully, so they have an idea of what's going on in your area, and maybe, hopefully, you. I was like that. It's a long-term business, or arrangement that y'all have visited a long time. So um, it's really, really good to like, because all umbrella policies are so customizable that it's really important, again, to make sure you're getting the right things covered for your operation. And as that changes, you're going to want to go back in and visit your insurance agent too, obviously. Again, but a lot of this, like I said, depending on your risk level, your risk tolerance, maybe it's for you, maybe it's not, depending on your location. And again, how far do you got to take those animals in to go to the sale barn, or uh, maybe you're just taking them to the fair for your kids or whatever. I mean, so again, that premium calculation, the cost of an umbrella policy is generally determined, again, based on a percentage of the underlying exposure, premium, and the liability limit you choose, making it relatively affordable to a way to obtain additional coverage. So, kind of in today's litigious society and environment, Having a robust umbrella policy is considered very prudent and affordable way. Generally, you can get an additional $1 million in coverage, if I recall correctly, anywhere from, I want to say, like an additional $500 to $1,000 a year, which again, depending on your situation, that's a lot of money. But for an additional $1 million in coverage and peace of mind, maybe it's not, depending on, again, your risk tolerance, where you live, what your operations like. Again, a lot of dependent factors here and a lot of customization with this. So I'm trying to include as much as I can, but I'm sure I'm going to miss some stuff, y'all. So what does it not cover? Okay. Like, um, so while the umbrella insurance policy provides an essential layer of liability and risk protection, it's important to really understand that it does have limitations. A policy does not cover your own injuries and property damage. So if you're like me and you trip over air sometimes and you can sprain an ankle, right, on your own property, not covered. Um, an umbrella policy's core purpose is really to protect you from liability for damages you cause to others or your operation. It's not designed to cover your own losses. So again, your own injuries, your own property doesn't cover those. So if there's damage to your home, your farm equipment, your livestock, or other personal property, it's not covered. Uh, Intentional and criminal acts. So umbrella insurance will not cover legal or financial liability resulting from a deliberate or criminal act. A claim must arise from an accident or a negligent action to be covered. Business malpractice and contractual disputes. So while an umbrella policy for a ranch or farm is a form of business insurance, again, it does have very specific limitations on what business activities it covers. So again, that's why it's really important to go over this with your insurance agent before you get one of these, and also make sure it's suited specifically to your operation, because my operation is not going to be like Ryan's operation or like Jessica's or like anybody else's on here, right? It's all going, everybody's is going to be different. I mean, unless we're related and working on the same operation. So yeah. Again, contractual liability, so liabilities that arise from a breach of contract with another party are typically excluded. So think of like if you contract sale your cattle and you can't meet it for whatever reason, it's not covered. Okay. Specialized and unique risks. Ag umbrella policies may exclude, again, certain specialized or high risk activities unless a specific endorsement is added. Again, I'm just going to keep saying, talk to your insurance agent. It's going to be real important. Pollution is excluded. So environmental liability, such as the cost of cleaning up a chemical spill, is not usually covered. Cybersecurity, I know, I was like, when I started researching into this, but it happens way more than we think. Damages resulting from data breaches, hacking, or other cyber attacks are excluded. Some gaps in umbrella insurance, basically, like I said, it kicks in after your underlying policy has been exhausted. It is not a replacement for these policies, though. I do want to stress that. It's like very much, I think I have been. If an underlying policy doesn't provide coverage for a particular claim, the umbrella policy may also not cover it. So again, this is where it's really important. Like I said, I'm going to keep hammering home to talk to, a licensed insurance agent and visit with them about what would be best. Although some umbrella policies do provide drop-down coverage for certain situations not covered by a primary policy. That's why, again, really important. And everybody's so different. So here's an example that I came up with, and that I'm sure if you Google, someone else probably came up with it too. So let's say we have a delivery driver and he slips on ice near the calving barn, right? Well, he hurt his rear in this case, as you can see from my picture here. And in this case, he sued for $1.2 million. We have farm and ranch liability coverage of up to $1 million. So we also happen to have umbrella policy that's an additional $1 million. So it's going to pay the remaining $200,000 in this case. Go. Okay. I was like, all right, this is our third example. So we are, oh, Ryan, are we doing okay?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in with a question that's
Sure.
relevant here. Just asking how you determine umbrella insurance amount and if the net worth of the farm or ranch might act as a guide to coverage amount.
That is a great guide to coverage amount. So, a lot of operations out here are very few are worth less than $1 million. Okay. A lot of them here are, I feel like, just based on size alone and given our average, let's say, ag land price in this district, are in the 3 to $10 million range, I would guess. So, yes, you can definitely use that as a guide. I would, again, talk to your insurance agent, and it also depends on yourself. If you're at a point in life where you're what's called self insured, that means all your bills are paid. And by all your bills, I mean all your bills, right? You don't have student loans, you don't have land debt, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have any other notes. You're basically running your operation on cash and you got money in the bank. You may need slash be okay with a lower level of coverage because you've got, again, money in the bank or other assets that you're able to pull from. It just depends. But yes, your land valuation could be a very good guide in order to determine how much umbrella coverage you would like to have. And I know there are policies depending on who you talk to and stuff. Generally, it starts at 1 million and it goes to like 5 or 10. So, um, but yeah. And there may be ones beyond that, but most of them I know are when I've talked to the insurance agents are in that range. Did that answer the question, Ryan?
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Just let us know if you have further questions regarding that, and we'll ask Shannon.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, I'm happy to visit about that. So, okay, so this is just a quick example of, and again, maybe we were the kids going on the tour, right? So a lot of times when I was younger, we did farm tours because I went to well, for where I grew up, a more rural school. So you're hosting a school tour, and little Johnny here, he tripped and fell over the hay bale and he busted his knee, right? Okay, so we have an unexpected potential lawsuit happening here, and it goes beyond our basic $1 million liability coverage. So that addition, again, that umbrella insurance policy would kick in that case to help cover, again, the legal defense fees, the legal fees, any court costs, and again, anything beyond that. So this is just, again, an example that I pulled up. So some costs and considerations. So I think that whoever asked that question, that was a really good question because I was like, the valuation of your land is a good way to talk about it to, again, your insurance agent, see kind of what they recommend with regards to that. But I've heard of a lot of insurance agents and even bankers recommending you get a policy that covers that because I was like, you want to make sure you can hang on to the land, especially if it's one, you know, that's been in the family for 3, 4, 5+ generations. We're really not wanting to let go of that if we can avoid it at all costs. So, um, but some costs and considerations. Premiums, again, generally are based on your operation size, right? They're generally pretty affordable. Again, a lot of times it is, oh, I thought it was 500 or 600. It's generally between 250 to $1,000 per year, per $1 million of coverage. Um, Again, a lot of times it's based on the size of the operation, the number of employees, vehicles and equipment, livestock head count. Um, there is a whole insurance math group that specializes in this and figures out how these premiums are calculated. And they could definitely tell you how to do that, but that is not my general area of expertise. So, um, the exact premium that you pay versus me versus, let's say, Ryan, we're all three going to be paying different premiums because we all live in different locations. We all have different types of operations. Maybe I have cattle and corn, right? So I got livestock and I got row crop. Maybe Ryan just has row crop, right? And maybe someone else has just livestock, right? So again, those operations, those sizes, those types of things, very different. So premiums based on that operation size, number of employees, the vehicles and equipment, livestock head count. But again, typically, in general, it's generally between that 250 to $1,000 per $1 million of coverage. So it's pretty reasonable when you think about it on an annual basis. So, and a lot of it, again, Depends on your level of risk. So your ranch's specific risks are going to be a major factor. A ranch that hosts guests, think about hunting. Well, you're going to need your own hunting. Anyways, that would be a whole other webinar. It's like hunting liability, but I'm just saying, operations, everybody's is different, right? A ranch that specifically hosts guests, that could be a major risk factor potentially. Has more employees or conducts agritourism activities, will have a higher risk profile and therefore a higher premium. So I know I moved here from Hawaii, just to let you know. I was like, I did the same job there. And I will say, because agritourism is so popular there, their umbrella insurance premium was much higher, but they had a lot of people coming through, right? Like I know, like Parker Ranch and some of those, like their policies were very high because they needed a high level of coverage because they had a lot of guests going through. I mean, a lot of guests on an annual basis, right? So again, depending on that, depending on the number of employees, vehicles, just, and your location. Again, I think I stated your state and even potentially the county where your ranch is located can affect the cost due to differing legal climates and risk factors. So again, a lot of stuff comes back to risk. Um, Umbrella insurance requires you to already have that minimum amount of liability coverage on your primary policies, such as your ranch liability, auto, and homeowners insurance. If your current coverage is low, you may need to increase it. The other thing is you can bundle. A lot of insurance companies offer discounts if you bundle your ranch, auto, and home insurance through the same provider. I mean, some people don't like doing that, but it is an option. And sometimes that can help offset some of that cost of the umbrella insurance policy. Before purchasing a policy, a rancher should really consider, again, assess your risk, okay? What is your total exposure and net worth? Okay, so if you have an operation that's $100 million operation, because some of those exist or more, really think about, again, your risk exposure. The primary purpose of umbrella insurance is to protect your assets in the event of a catastrophic lawsuit. So again, we want to protect that land that's been in the family for 3, 4, 5 generations. A good rule of thumb is to have enough umbrella coverage to at least match your net worth. So again, our previous question, great question. You already had the right idea, I think. You want it to match at least what your net worth is. You should consider the value of your ranch, your equipment, personal savings, and any potential future earnings when determining the appropriate coverage level. You know, our operations have some pretty unique risks that a standard personal umbrella policy may not cover. So again, I'm going to tell you, really talk to your agent, get somebody who knows ag. A ranch or farm specific umbrella policy is designed to address liabilities such as livestock related incidents, agritourism, employer liability, vehicle accidents, product liability. Again, we don't think anything's going to happen, but sometimes it does. So it's really crucial for you to have some clear, open conversations with your insurance agent to make sure that policy is going to cover all of your specific ranch activities. So again, just review all your policies you already have before you go in, and then talk to your agent. Like I keep saying, that insurance is a secondary layer of protection, meaning it only kicks in after that primary policy reaches its limits. So to qualify for that, like I said, you got to have those minimums. A significant benefit potentially of an umbrella insurance policy is that it does provide what's called a duty to defend. This means the insurance company will cover legal fees and defense costs, like we've talked about, which can be substantial, like I've said, even if you are not found at fault in a lawsuit. This can be a critical consideration. I've met many an operation that has sometimes gone into crippling debt because of lawsuits. So sometimes just that umbrella policy being able to kick in beyond and help with those legal fees, that can be good. But there are exclusions and limitations to everything. So be sure to read that policy very carefully and understand what is not covered. Like I said, a lot of common exclusions for particularly farm and ranch umbrella policies include things like intentional acts, criminal activities, or environmental liabilities. So think things like pollution cleanup. You may need separate specialized insurance policies for these risks may be available. Again, you just got to talk to your local agent. So, integrating umbrella insurance in your risk management plan, again, acts as an extra layer of protection above and beyond the limits of your underlying insurance policies like general or general liability insurance or general auto insurance. It can protect you and your business from substantial financial losses that could arise. It's just really important to ask yourself some questions, evaluate your liability exposure coverage needs, assess those risks, consider the type of activities you do. Do you transport animals regularly? Do you host agritourism or do custom work? Do you have people doing custom work on your operation, custom haying? A lot of people have that, right? Are my liability limits aligned with my current market values and risks? I mean, cost of land in the last decade, woo, it has changed a lot. So we might have had a $1 million liability policy and have a $1 million umbrella policy from 10 or 15 or 20 years ago we've been paying for. But we might need to double check and see where we're at now, right? So that's a different place. So it's really important to kind of dust off the old notebook, as I like to say, and go through these and be like, oh, my operation's worth 3 million and I only have $2 million in coverage. Maybe because I'm not finished paying everything off, I want to make sure I have everything covered up to my current net worth. So again, it's where it's great to have a solid insurance agent you're working with on a pretty regular basis. So a professional risk advisor or an experienced insurance agent specializing in this can really, really, again, help you assess kind of your own unique risks and recommend appropriate coverage levels. So, in summary, umbrella insurance for the operation adds an extra layer of coverage uh, to your existing policy, protecting you when a claim exceeds the limits of your primary insurance. This extra protection can be really crucial if serious accidents and legal expenses occur. It covers things like outside parties, vehicle accidents, livestock related events, injuries to visitors, product liability, equipment related injuries, um, things like that. So the ranching business is really unpredictable, and a single major accident can be financially devastating. So, like I've stated earlier in my examples, I was like, I'm sure you either know of or have heard of a neighbor or a friend of a friend where something happened, like I said, where the kids were out, one of them had an accident, a bull got out when you were toting him to market, or a steer got out when you were toting him to market. Um, and there was an accident, and it just, I've heard of those stories. I'm sure you have too. So again, it's just depending on your risk, depending on where you are, it is part of a strong risk management toolbox. It can help fill those critical gaps. Again, sometimes there are extra things you can get added in there, those drop down coverage options. It's where it's really important again to talk to your insurance agent, because I was like, maybe you didn't know you lived in a pretty litigious part of the state. Who can say? It's like, but yeah. So again, you never know when something's going to happen. And we oftentimes, again, I'm putting myself in everybody's shoes here, hopefully to some extent, but we haul animals quite a bit. Sometimes we're hauling water to them. Sometimes there's an accident with that container, right? So it does happen. We don't think it does. We hope it doesn't. But that umbrella insurance policy can sometimes just give you an extra peace of mind. But again, depending on where you're at in life, it may or may not be right for you. It depends. So it can be a great tool in the toolbox of all your risk management strategies, basically. Can fill some of those gaps. It's pretty affordable for the most part. So these are the references. My thing's not flipping. These are the references I've used currently for this presentation. And then, are there any additional questions?
Questions are welcome to be typed into the Q&A or the chat.
Absolutely.
Not seeing any right now.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
going to put in the chat the web address for our Center for Ag Profitability's webinar page. And there you can find links to the recordings of Shannon's first two presentations,
Yeah.
part one and part two in livestock, which cover more programs. Those were done back at the end of May, if you're looking for those in the
Mhm.
archive. And this recording will be posted there likely later this afternoon as well.
Yeah.
So you can find it there. And if you have any questions that come up after you watch this too, and maybe you'll think of it later, do not hesitate to reach out to us, please. We'd
Yeah.
be happy to help get those questions answered.
Yeah.
Again, we do have a little bit of time left, so we'll hang on for a minute here if any questions do come in. If they don't, I want to thank you for attending today. And when you close out of your Zoom window, you'll be presented with a very brief survey that just asks you your opinion on how today went and any ideas you have for future webinars that could be helpful for you as we look to continue this series here at the Center for Ag Profitability every Thursday, most Thursdays anyway, around this noon Central Time. So again, if you have questions, please take the opportunity now to type them in. And you can always get a hold of us if something comes to mind later.
Yeah. Feel free to send an email, give a phone call.
Next Thursday, we'll be back our webinar on August 7th at noon Central. Mending the Stress Fence. Glennis McClure with the Center for Ag Profitability will present on how to manage stress levels and reduce the effects of unwanted stress with some strategies that are keenly geared toward agricultural professionals. So that's what's happening next Thursday. And the month of August, we'll also be looking at some changes in the new Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed and signed into law. August 14th, we'll be looking specifically at new tax changes that the bill brings to agriculture. And we'll follow that up with presentation on the 21st with kind of a look at farm bill programs that are impacted by the bill. So you can find those on that same URL I put in the chat and register for those. So Shannon, a question for you. If you have a farmer that cash rents and uses their own equipment and somehow hurts themselves while fixing that equipment on your land, do you think that's an incident they can come after you for?
That's a good question. I think, again, I would talk to my insurance agent and maybe an attorney because this is a fascinating question. Because you're right, a lot of people around here and in this state, a lot of people are renting land because they don't make more of that nowadays. That is a good question. I am not sure, Kathy. I'm gonna have to look that up. But I would imagine, depending on how, I think probably has some dependency on your lease stipulations and requirements. Because you can, so this goes into written leases. It's like you can limit some of your liability if you're a landowner in some of those lease clauses. Um, Same thing if you're a renter, right? So there are certain limitations within that, but you could do that through your lease to some extent. Um, Hurts himself fixing it on your land. If he's renting that land, assuming that is currently his, I would think not, but I would have to talk to an insurance agent and an attorney to know for sure. So that is a really good question, though. I would assume because it's his own equipment. I don't know. That's just such a good question because I could see that being sliced a lot of ways depending on where you live.
Yeah, it kind of begs the question, well, are they doing it in your shed or with your equipment stuff, but if they're renting it, that's a tricky one.
Yeah. I think from what I can see from a quick search here, it's pretty complex and it's going to depend heavily on the specifics, including, like I said earlier, the lease agreement and state laws. And I'm going to say I'm not familiar enough with the Nebraska state laws with regards to that. I don't know about you, Ryan,
No,
but
not in the
it's a
list
good
to talk about
question.
here. No. Um, yeah, that's a great question. And she actually followed up
Hmm.
with another question related, I presume, to
Hmm.
perhaps that same hypothetical renter on the land if they bring their grandchild,
Ooh,
or a relative for a ride and they get hurt.
there's a potential. I would say I would again talk to my insurance agent or an attorney because that liability is, yeah, it could be. That is a good question, though. Yeah, because it's technically that's classified as a visitor. So, yeah, that's where this stuff can get sticky and in the weeds, I tell you what. So, but yeah, because I think that would be, I would class that again, not an attorney, not an insurance agent, but I would say that's considered a visitor, even if you didn't know about it, which is unfortunate. But yeah, potentially they could come after you.
Yeah, good questions. Thanks, Kathy. And if anybody
Yeah.
else has questions, we'll again hang on for just another minute here to watch for that. If you don't, though, thanks again for joining us today
Yeah.
on the webinar. And we're always here to help, so be sure to follow up if anything comes to mind.
No, that was a really good question. Okay, this is kind of what I could find related to the original question. So now this is general and it says there are potential differences based on that lease agreement and state laws, but the occupier in general, I'm going to go with generalities. Primary liability generally rests with the tenant. As the occupier and operator of the land, the tenant or the farmer, as we'll call him, is generally responsible for the day-to-day activities and safety of those on the property, including themselves. This typically extends to the maintenance and repair of their own equipment. However, if there's negligence related to the premises, that's where potentially things get real sticky. So if the injury was caused by a dangerous condition on the property that the landlord was responsible for maintaining under the lease, again, this is where that lease is really handy, or a hazard they knew about and failed to address, the landowner might be liable. So hopefully that adds some additional clarity or makes it muddier, one or the other. So.
All right. Well, I don't see anything else coming in right now. Shannon, thanks for the real-time research here. And thank you, everybody, again for attending. We really appreciate having you on. And we will be back again next Thursday at noon with another webinar from the Center for Ag Profitability. So, Shannon, thank you. And I hope everybody has a great day.